Good morning, everybody. As we take our seats, thank you for being good folks to take a networking break serious. Yeah, they were doing a lot of talking. And Dick Formica came up and says, "You will be seated now." Good to see he's got the sergeant majors in line. Our next panel is Transforming at Pace of Emerging Operational Requirements. The Army and industry leaders will discuss how game-changing technologies will serve as force multipliers as the DoD seeks to match new capabilities and emerging requirements. To moderate this discussion, we have Lieutenant General Retired Richard Formica, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at CALIBRE. Lieutenant General Formica leads CALIBRE's strategic planning and positioning in support of Strategy 2025, their goals and objectives. A career field artillery fire support officer, he served in the Army for over 36 years. His final assignment was as Commanding General, U.S. Army Space and Missile Defense Command, U.S. Strategic Command's Joint Functional Component for Integrated Missile Defense. He graduated from Bryant University with a BS in Law Enforcement and also holds an MMAS from U.S. Army Command General Staff College and a Master of Science in National Security Studies from the National War College. Dick, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, General Smith. And thank you to AUSA for hosting this hot topic on installations. As General Wilson said, it is, I think it was General Wilson. No, it was Zinga said, it is a hot topic. It is a hot topic, and we're glad to be a part of it. Our panel has been identified to address the important topic of transforming at the pace of emerging operational requirements. As you heard General Wilson say, and what came out clear in the first panel, our Army installations are critical because they serve as vital power projection platforms. They provide the land, ranges, and classroom facilities for collective and individual home station and institutional training. And they maintain and provide the quality of life that our soldiers, civilians, and families deserve. Nothing in our Army is static. Our Army installations face constant changes in how we manage them, challenges in how they get the funding that they need, and increasing demands on what we expect of them. So AUSA has assembled this strong panel of experts to lead our discussion on introducing technologies to transform at the pace of emerging operational requirements. Our panel members are Mr. Brandon Cockrell, currently serves as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Energy and Sustainability in the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Installations, Energy, and Environment. Prior to that, he was a Deputy Garrison Commander at Fort Benning, Georgia. Also, we have Command Sergeant Major Jimmy Sellers, Command Sergeant Major of U.S. Army Materiel Command, a position he's held for 2 years now. And then he'll be followed by Sergeant Major Robert Haynie, who's the Senior Enlisted Advisor for the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Acquisition, Logistics, and Technology, but comes to that job with experience as the former Command Sergeant Major of the 25th ID, and that will inform his experience today. We've got 60 minutes for this panel. We're going to do it a little bit differently. The intent here is to give each panel member about 4 to 5 minutes to give their own opening remarks. And that should leave 40 minutes or so for your questions and answers. And at the end, as we close, I'll give each panel member 30 seconds each. As you direct your questions, of course, you can direct them to any one of the panel members, but I've invited the panel members, as questions come in, to feel free to chime in, as the strength of the panel is the interaction among them together and not just one-on-one responses to your questions. So with that, let's get started. We'll start with Mr. Cockrell.
Thanks, General. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You know, anytime that you do really anything in life, I think the core question is why. So as we're looking with this panel, you ask, why in the world are we looking and focusing on transforming installations? And I think you can pull a thread back to a statement that was made in the 2018 National Defense Strategy that says the homeland is no longer a sanctuary. Okay, so that being said, and we're familiar with that statement, and we're familiar with it. It was the actual two of other domains that were kind of introduced with space and cyber to realize that the homeland can be reached. So if the homeland is not a sanctuary, then the installations that are in the homeland are no longer a sanctuary. And was stated earlier, we are taking and we're taking the whole focus that we have in front of us is how do we prepare for this new paradigm. Now, one of my favorite slogans as a former deputy garrison commander was with MCOM is we are the Army's home. So all of a sudden, if the homeland is not a sanctuary, installations are not a sanctuary, and if installations are the Army's home, to me, this is where it gets personal. And it completely changes how we have to do things. So when I took this job a few months ago, my initial thoughts coming out of an installation were that installations probably should be able to be be islands when they need to be. That's changed. I've got a core belief now that my entire team we work on is that installations must be capable of being an island in a contested environment, because we can't kid ourselves that any type of event that happens that we won't be in a contested environment. So real quickly, how are we getting after that? Number one, we understand the threats. There's really four that we've kind of charged my team with is the cyber threat. Look at the numbers of the additional threats that you see across the board that are increasing. The physical threats. I mean, we remember what happened in North Carolina back 2 years ago when a gentleman came up with a high-powered rifle to one of the transformers. We have to be able to watch physical threats. The third is natural disasters. We talked about Hurricane Helene earlier. We've actually gone in and studied how they have rebuilt after Hurricane Michael hit. How do we learn from that as well? And then the fourth, this is a new one. This is a threat that a lot of people may not view as a threat, but we're kind of putting it into our calculus. It's the threat of energy demand. So what we're learning is industry's telling us that between now and 2030, energy demand will increase by 20%. So if I'm a co-op and I'm servicing an installation and I have 5 generators, that means I have to build another. Currently, to get a natural gas generator through some of the partners here in the US, it takes 24 months to get on the list. So if we have a 20% demand, we're already halfway through before we can even get the generator. So that will translate into, how do we forecast our dependencies on installations, as well as how do we take and limit the cost. So we're focusing really on a couple of things, and we'll dive into these. Number one is energy resilience. And that means 2 things. That means how do we generate what we need when we need it, but at the same time, how do we use less? Because if I'm using less, then that means I have to generate and store less. The second is we're really looking at water resilience. Some eye-opening things out of Fort Eisenhower was making sure that when the water system itself, many folks don't know that the water system shut down as well because of the debris that was in the river. So how do you also have the amount of water where it's needed, when it's needed at installations? The third, we're testing our resilience. We did a hack the microgrid event. I remember when my teams told me we're doing a hack the microgrid. My first question was, does our cyber know we're doing this? So we had, it was a really good event, amazing lessons learned. We tested ourselves. Black Start exercises, you heard those earlier. We'll talk some more about that, I'm sure. We're getting as creative as we can with acquisition. If you haven't heard about the Office of Energy Initiatives, be ready. So I've chartered that office as well as some other folks on my team to let's look at third-party financing the way we can to get this resilience, because we have to be islands. We're looking at partnerships. We've got great utility partners. I had a conversation about Fort Eisenhower after the hurricane. They said, well, hey, wouldn't it have been better if we had our own, our own system and we had our own people and we could get back on track later? And my statement was, I really don't want to be in competition with Georgia Power. I want to be a partner with Georgia Power, and they performed phenomenally well to get that post back up. And then last, we are embracing technology. I mean, there's some really amazing new technologies that are coming, and we're testing them. We're taking installations and we're finding locations to put these technologies in, and we're shaving energy. We're saving money and building that resilience that's required across the board. So I'm looking forward to this panel. It's going to be some great conversations as well. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. Command Sergeant Major Sellers.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Hey, look, I'm really excited to be here today, and what a great opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about what AMC is doing in this endeavor, especially from a soldier perspective. I would tell you that we have to take a hard look at this year, being the Army's 250th anniversary, and what that means. And I think this is a golden opportunity to do some things to harden our installations, one, and then number two, my boss says, Lieutenant General Mohan, reimagine the way in which we take care of our soldiers and their family members on the installations. And as the Chief of Staff of the Army would say, if there's anything that we're doing on the installation, we need to have the soldiers and their families as the North Star for how we look at and examine and then improve our infrastructure on the post. So I'm really excited not only about that being the first thing, but the second thing is as we enhance soldier experiences on the post, what does that look like? The Chief of Staff has asked us to deliver ready combat formations, and we've added with precision and how we do that. And so taking care of our family members, healthcare, welfare, quality of life, barracks, infrastructure, housing, all of that is important. And I think we have to streamline those processes and capabilities to make sure that we're doing the right things right with the investments that our country has charged us to do. And the last thing I would just say is that we are deeply committed to getting this right and enhancing the soldier quality of life. Not only are the infrastructures that they use every single day from a child care facility perspective is important, but where they live, work, and play is equally important. And so I always like to say, we can't do what we do inside the gates without the help of those outside the gates. And so I think those are very important parts that we have to bring together holistically and leverage some of those things that industry is doing outside the gates to make sure that we're giving our soldiers the best quality so that when they deploy, fight, and win on the battlefield, they don't have to worry about anything that's going on the installation. So I'll pause there and pass it over to my battle buddy, Sergeant Major Haynie.
Well, thank you very much. And General Formica, thank you. AUSA, I really appreciate you putting together an important panel and bringing a lot of heavy hitters here today to talk about something that's very important, the transformation across our Army installations. As mentioned prior, I'm Sergeant Major Rob Haynie, the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Acquisitions, Logistics, and Technology. In that role, I'm surrounded by acquisitions professionals, both green suiters and both civilians. However, I'm not a acquisitions officer. I'm an infantryman. I've been an infantryman for about 30 years. My focus over the last 30 years has really been focused on lethality and readiness. And as I've moved up to this job, I see how the acquisitions corps and contracting command have helped with readiness and lethality across our soldiers and making us ready to fight and win our nation's wars. So I'll talk a little bit about that later. Transformation at speed and scale requires fundamental shift in the mindset of the Army. And I think, General George is driving that change right now. We must relook our current processes and embrace the new technologies and our contracting authorities to drive modernization. The ASALT is at the forefront of transformation and actively modernizing facilities for our soldiers to help increase lethality and operational effectiveness. And finally, ASALT plays a major role in transforming Army installations with cutting-edge technologies that I'll talk about a little bit later by embracing new approaches and leveraging innovative purchasing authorities. We are ensuring that the best equipment is getting to the best soldiers in the quickest amount of time. Thanks very much, and I look forward to the rest of the panel.
Okay, thanks. We've got plenty of time for your questions. So who wants to go first? We got some already? Look at that. Okay, the first one, again, it's addressed to Mr. Cockrell, but I invite all of you to choose to speak up as you wish. So the first one is says, as the Army continues to evolve against the pace of emerging operational requirements, could you share about the Army's current and future directions regarding critical infrastructure and energy resilience? You talked a little bit about energy resilience. We want to expand on that.
Absolutely, yeah. So again, making sure that we have the energy where we need it and when we need it is key. So there's a term that's kind of, you've already heard this morning mentioned several times, called microgrids. That's kind of the term, almost the term of the year as we're driving forward here. So one of the things I want to make sure that we understand the definitions, because I'm learning it as well, is a microgrid is really two pieces. It is a microgrid which determines where the power is directed, and then there is a generation source. What happens is it all gets term under microgrid, but it's two pieces. And the generation source is what's key, is because it can be virtually anything. It can be any type of new modern technology, all the way back to any type of older technology that generates power. Now, the microgrid is what takes and directs that power across the board. And that technology, if it directs grid power, if you've got a grid power, a portion of a grid power outage, a microgrid can redirect it. We have installations that have 2 and 3 feeds that go into the installation. One goes down, the microgrid can, within seconds, redirect that power. So you have that resiliency across the board. So that's some of the modernization pieces and some of the way we're transforming those across the board. But the second part of that is, how are we learning to use less? And we are really looking at the new technologies to find ways. You've heard of programs called energy savings performance contracts. Utility contractors are coming in as well. And I can remember, as the deputy garrison commander, they came in and said, hey, sir, we would like for you to sign phase 2 of this $40 million contract to go through and save energy. So you can hear from my accent, I'm not from Missouri, from LA and lower Alabama. And the thing is, what I did was I said, okay, well, I need you to prove it. So show me. So we hired a third-party contractor to come in and evaluate. I was right. They weren't saving what they said they were saving. They were saving more. So I said, good, give me the piece of paper. And then, so now at that installation, there's a fence line to fence line, is we're taking and finding ways that we can put technologies in now to where they come in, and it's gone past just the lighting and the window systems. It's, what are the new technologies? What are the new sensors? How can sensors tell me? We did a test a year ago on the installation, because all of your cell phones have publicly available ping data. So we partnered with cell phone data companies to ping data to see when people were not in buildings, under the assumption that every person in an office building has a cell phone. And then if that data showed no one was in there, then centrally we shut that building down and adjust their temperatures. So being able to control it at that level, it's just us getting smarter and getting smarter more rapidly as we're going forward.
That's great. Thanks. Before we go to the next question, I was just going to ask, I want to pull that thread. As on the one hand, you're using technology at the installation level to reduce demand. How have the increased amount of demands by introducing technology in our units and our operation, how has that offset the savings that you're able to accomplish?
So now it's almost a 1-for-1 that we're seeing at some installations. And it varies by post because luckily we were ahead of the game in putting in these, what's called deep energy retrofits, and partnering with these third-party financing. We were ahead of the game before increasing technology requirements. A concern of mine is when, we can do anything in the Army. We can do anything with installations as long as we have time. And being able to look into the future and partnering with ASALT and partnering with Army Futures Command, and knowing that in this new piece of equipment is going to be fielded in the next 5 years or in the next 10 years, it's getting our installation sustainment piece, our installation modernization pieces to pull that energy need where it's needed, when it's needed. So that way we match the capability when the equipment arrives. Anybody's ever worked at a garrison, of the story of, we have a new fire truck that doesn't fit in the fire station. Yeah. So what I want to make sure is we have energy at the point when the equipment arrives at that location.
Fair enough. Anybody else want to talk about energy at the installation, Sergeant Major?
I would just actually, the concept and the discussion on microgrid and is super important. Being over in the 25th ID over there in Hawaii a couple of years back, we had routine power outages, but we weren't getting that information or the amount of data without somebody calling in or really what was going on. And it was really difficult to reroute or, move assets, inform HECO to go and move assets to another part of the installation. This sounds like a great initiative that will help speed up that. And then really in the long run, that helps out, maintenance facilities and town halls and barracks that we need to keep running and understanding which areas we can close down and conserve power. We were doing that kind of stubby pencil for a while when we were over there going through the battle drills that we were going through. So all of these technologies sound like they're going to help out a lot with management.
Okay, thanks, Sergeant Major. This next question was initially directed to Command Sergeant Major Sellers. Says, Sergeant Major, as the senior enlisted leader of the U.S. Army Materiel Command, what has been your most unique challenges in support of the Army's transformation of our installations at the pace of emerging requirements? And how have you and your team collaborated to come up with solutions to those problems?
That's a great question. I think the most challenging thing we had to deal with is being able to allocate the amount of resources that we receive and put it in the right place. So I think, MCOM has done a great job at helping us see ourselves through the FIP process and how that works out. But, it's a balancing game, and we don't get a lot in terms of funding and able to help us, kind of bring some of those things to light where we really need things at. Because, I kind of describe it as there's a big piece of the island that we have to cover, and we only have a certain amount of resources to cover all of that. So how we do that, it has to be, kind of the art and science of it all. And then, just being able to take the leadership from a senior enlisted perspective and make sure that those soldiers underneath us understand that the commanders are making informed and educated decisions based off of the priorities and in terms of what that may be coming down from our Army senior leaders. So, between resources and just the juggling act of having to balance resources is where I see some of the most challenges that in the last couple of years since I've been in position. Thanks.
I would just ask any of you, both from your deputy garrison commander experience, how do we see priorities aligned? The chief's talking about increasing senior mission commanders' authority on installations. MCOM is designed to provide enterprise view. How do those and this may be a question that you may get to in on your panel. Yeah. How do we ensure those priorities are aligned and still take advantage of the enterprise view that MCOM brings? If you want to talk about that now, then we'll save it for you too, General Jones.
In everything in an installation works its way back down to the cornerstone of the senior commander, because they're the ones that are given the responsibility and the authority for that installation for the duration that they're there. So the alignment of resources, the alignment of priorities, all of that falls under the hat of the senior commander, and ensuring that that senior commander is well informed from the garrison perspective, from the MCOM perspective, from MCOM region perspective as well. That is something that to me is the powerhouse, to know that that senior commander comes in and say, hey, you are here for 2 years to shepherd the journey of this installation, which may be already 100 years old. So that to me becomes really the power that MCOM pulls in and gives to that, the authority of that senior commander. They give them so much context and so much portions of the history, and then these becomes their boundaries. So.
And if I could, I'd just add, from a senior mission commander's perspective, I had the opportunity to do that job at White Sands Missile Range. And, one of the things I found is that getting things from the garrison, it has to be a good communication process by where, the senior mission commander listens and understands what the garrison is trying to tell them and how they're trying to advise them. And then, kind of also understanding that, this is a very big priority for the Army. But at the same time, there are going to be some things that happen that you plan and do and execute on your watch that you may not ever see come to fruition. And so you got to be comfortable with that Instead of just going after the 25-meter or the 50-meter target, you got to look at some of those long-term enduring things that are going to affect the installation long after your time in command. Over.
That's really good. No, okay. This is a little bit more specific on the challenges, and it goes to any member of the panel. It says, what law, policy, or restrictions cause the most challenges to innovating our installations, and how would you change those restrictions? This is not resource-based, law, policy, or restrictions. That's a good one, whoever asked that. Otherwise, we're going to spend the whole time talking about money.
Yeah, that's a good question. As a matter of fact, we're working on some recommended policy changes now. Being able to specifically point out one or two, I think, would be a challenge. A wise mentor of mine once said that every problem that we're facing was once someone's good idea. And that's something, because that good idea was exactly what
I can
was
associate with that.
that good idea and the things that were put in place were what was put in place at that moment in time. Either there's nothing that we're facing that's a challenge that was put in place because it was nefarious or bad. It's now what's happened is, with technology increasing, with risk increasing, with transformation is now something that's not an afterthought. It's something that has to occur now. It's finding those deliberate processes that were put in place, because a lot of times, probably the big challenge we have is what things are limiting our speed. But those things were put in place for a reason. I mean, we like bureaucracy. I mean, bureaucracy is what gets us paid. So we're a fan of that to an extent. But it's finding those things that we have challenges today with, and then there's processes in place to address those. So I think that's the key, is on an annual basis, or quicker actually than that now, is finding those things that are our challenges.
Yeah, and from the ASALT perspective, we do have OTAs that are available, and we're starting to be able to use creative ways to authorize the use of OTAs, flexible legal instruments used by the government with non-traditional contractors, small business for research, and work with nonprofits to develop and prototyping things. I think, at least from the contracting command perspective, our civilians and soldiers are starting to look at ways where we can help actually put those OTAs in, and it's not a long-term FARA type process. So that will allow us to have more flexibility, more prototyping, innovate at the speed of industry, and really we have those authorities right now. We're embracing how we're using them, and we're coming up with creative ways with AMC and everyone else to put some of those things into place.
Okay, thanks. Again, this for any panel member. It started with Mr. Cockrell, but I'm broadening it out. Mr. Cockrell actually talked about installations as islands. This could separate or isolate the Army from local communities in and around our installations, and could impact the Army's ability to recruit. How do you balance protecting our installations with the ability to engage with Americans that live around our installations?
Good question. I honestly would probably challenge that statement, because here's the things that we're learning is 60, 70, 80% of our soldiers already live in the community. All of our civilians live in the community. All of our contractors live in the community. So having the capability to island is something that does nothing more than benefit the community. So back in my deputy garrison commander days, we started at Fort Benning. We saw the impact of that. We started a regional sustainability conference. We reached out to the chambers of commerce, to the cities. Actually had retired General McKean, who was the city manager at Panama City when it virtually was wiped off the face of the earth, come in and brief us and said, what did you learn? And the things that we saw real quickly is natural disasters, man-made disasters, they don't stop or start at an installation boundary. And when the community or when we have a need, it's all hands on deck. Because the thing I've learned is a lot of your military communities have military retirees, and a leader can't not lead. So when you have a retiree in the community, they're leading in the community. And a lot of your baseball coaches, your soccer coaches, your Sunday school teachers, they're soldiers, they're spouses, they're retirees. So what happens is the islanding aspect becomes to where we can continue to perform our mission, regardless of what's thrown at us. But at the same time is, how do we take and provide support to a community? And that's where the power and the strength. So I think, I think we're short-sighted to think if that would ever happen. So I think we have to prepare for when that happens. Then I think you're going to see recruitment skyrocket in that area because everybody wants to be part of a winning team. And that's where this kind of parlays together with me.
That's great. Hey, I would tell you that that's a wonderful question. I'd go back to the days in which I was at the White Sands Missile Range. And if you've ever been out there, it is an island, right? It sits in the middle of nowhere. So you really have to be creative. The closest city is 30 miles apart, and at least takes 45 minutes to get there. And it was Las Cruces. It's in the middle of nowhere. But how do we bring those folks from the city of Las Cruces closer to us? And, I'm just going to use one example of golf courses on the installation. Everybody loves to play golf, right? For the most part. So we just open that up. And there's windows of opportunity that you have on those installations that will give you the time to bring the community closer to you. Because, we all, like I said in the very beginning of my opening statement, we can't do what we do on the installation without the help from those around off the installation. Now, I stole that from my battle buddy at the time, Lieutenant General Gwen Bingham, who was the White Sands Missile Range commander. And so she said that all the time. And so being creative in how we do that and partner with, those in the cities around us is crucial, right? And go to Fort Bliss. I can only say that because I've been there, and it's just a magnificent place for how they've opened up the gates, still maintain security, and then invited the city of El Paso into the post. And I think that place has thrived because of that. We got plenty of examples like that, but that's just like the number one example that resonates with me in my mind.
Well, one additional thing, when we were over there, more than 70% of our families lived on Army installation owned property over there in Hawaii. I think it is incumbent upon senior commanders, it's incumbent upon those senior leaders on the installation to continue that outreach. And we never felt like there wasn't connection with the community. We were taking care of our own when we needed to, and we opened up the post when we needed to. We invited the community on for events. And just from my brief time over there in Hawaii, the recruiting command over there never had a problem meeting their mission because of the interaction that was over there. So I think we're strengthening our installations to be self-resilient. We're not blocking them off from the communities.
Okay, that was a great discussion. I'm going to give away my age and lack of experience a little bit because I'm going to combine two questions, and they both are related to something called ICS IoT. I don't know what IoT is. Who knows what that is? Say that. Somebody speak it up. Internet of Things.
Of course.
I knew that. All right, two-part question. I'm going to combine two because they're both related by marriage here. Where, panel, do you see the Internet of Things being used on the installation for creating smart installations? And the follow-on to that is, what are the cybersecurity challenges associated with it?
All right. I am a huge fan of nesting and integrating Internet of Thing technologies.
Me too.
Love the partnership. So the key thing about it is what the Internet of Things or all of these new emerging technologies lets us do is lets us see ourselves before we have a problem. they become predictive and not reactive. There are case study after case study and proven technologies that have been put in place. The hotel is an example. The hotel on Fort Benning, they took 2 sensors. Their current process was to exchange an air filter in every room once every 30 days because that's how it's always been done. They took 2 sensors and put one before the air filter and one after the air filter to measure the pressure differential. They realized they were changing them 3 times from what they needed to be changing them. They saved all kind of money. We're looking at installations to where can you put these sensors in place to know when things happen. A pretty substantial number of fire alarms on installations are false alarms, primarily because it's a drop in water pressure, not that triggers that sensor, and it's not a fire. Having multiple sensors in place stops all of the risk when a fire truck has to roll across the installation in empty buildings. So it's being extremely intelligent in those ways. Taking those pieces as well and understanding when your energy prices are increasing. We've got one installation that has almost a 10 megawatt natural gas generator. Last year during the summer, when the sensors indicated in the amount of what we were paying per kilowatt hour increased to a level above what it could be generated at that installation, that generator turned on. We saved $1.2 million in taxpayer dollars last summer. Taking those sensors and putting them in buildings. We've got installations that can control their 5,000 square feet and above buildings at a computer terminal. So during holiday block leave, you're taking and adjusting those temperatures. The cell phone data, that's how it gets done. So putting those sensors in place is critical. How do you protect them? That becomes a challenge. That's one of the reasons we did a Hack the Microgrid event. Let's see where are our vulnerabilities, and let's get these 21 and 22-year-olds that can hack anything, and let's see if they can get in. And how do we take and shore up our vulnerabilities to make sure it occurs? There's a partnership with us, with ASALT, with our cyber, with everybody, because technology is evolving so rapidly. We have to get the people that are constantly using it and above it and basically researching and building it. I mean, I've had a conversation with a professor at an installation about how they're putting AI-driven engines on what's called a JACE, which is basically the brain of buildings. How do you determine that? So it's so fast and so rapid in that world that we have to be, but embracing it, I believe, is key. And then finding ways that we're saving money by using it.
Okay, I'm going to combine 2 questions again. So if you're waiting to see if your question's being asked, you may not recognize it exactly the way you wrote it. And I'm going to ask the 2 sergeants major to respond first, and then we'll follow up with Mr. Cockrell. This is about security, installation security. And you had mentioned, Mr. Cockrell, 4 threats. What do you all see as the largest threats or challenges to installation security? And what are we doing to ensure that families are safe? And when soldiers are downrange, they're confident that their families are safe from those security threats. So I'll open it up to the 2 sergeants major first, please.
So my little bit of experience was where we had security problems was the massive amount of fence line that we had to patrol, secure, and there were just gaps, and people would dig under the fence or and come into the housing areas. And if we look at some of our installations across the United States and over there in Hawaii, is we had 19 different little outposts and areas, and that's pretty tough to control all that when MP reductions have been going on and MPs are doing their tactical missions. And so I think that's where we had the most amount of problem. We had to put out additional patrols, and in the future, maybe there are ways to monitor those fence lines a little bit better. But that's where we spent a lot of energy.
I would tell you from my perspective, as I had the chance to get around to, multiple post-campus stations from being in this position, there's 2 things I would say that I'm very, very confident in, looking at it holistically up front. And that would be the training and education in our security guards and how we select those individuals and train them and being able to put them in front of a gate and then, source, man their weapon system and doing what they do to kind of protect the installation. That's kind of number one. The protection comes from there, the training and education of our security guards. The second thing is, I think, the background checks that we do for individuals that want to come on the installation. They are rigid, they are fair, and they go through the entire process, and we just don't let anybody on the background. And when we do, they're stopped immediately, and then they're dealt with at that point in time. So I think we've, did some things through a methodical way in terms of, educating our workforce and our security guards and training them. And then the way that we do background checks for individuals that try to get them that's not normally secured.
Great question, because one of the things you're a soldier. If you're deployed and your family's not taken care of, how would you rate your lethality? It's not there. So being able to protect and provide for families while a soldier is deployed directly links to lethality. Period. So concern of mine is because I'm looking at threats now, but I realize that the amount of time it takes for us to make a decision and to have an effect, then we've got to look at what are the threats that we see in 2, 3, 4 years. Where do we forecast some of those? Your whole power grid system is a concern of mine. That's why I believe every installation has to be an island. We have to be able to generate our own. We have to be able to conduct missions when and where needed from our installations. So that to me is a big threat that I'm really keeping my eyes on, is how do we harden it? Not only how do we harden it physically, but on the cyber front, because once we stand up, if all of a sudden the power grid goes down and we're in, heaven forbid, an event that we don't want to be in, and we're deploying and the power grid goes down, then how long in the past 100 years have we deployed without electricity? So how do we take and how do we do it? And we're learning. We conducted a Black Start exercise and did a CONUS redeployment while that airfield was on backup power. That happened the same day the Black Start occurred, just in happenstance. But it worked. So that proved as one more instance that the Black Starts worked. So what I'm really concerned about is how do we provide that home station and that protection piece against all those threats for that family, so that soldier who's deployed can go do what they're supposed to do and win the nation's wars.
Okay, thanks. This one came in for Command Sergeant Major Sellers, but again, any of you may want to comment on it. And it takes a little bit different turn on the transformation of our technologies. Sergeant Major, can you elaborate on the initiative of campus-style dining facilities and tell how that is going to positively impact our installations and maybe residual impact on recruiting and retention? And then I would add, while we're talking about campus-style dining facilities, what other initiatives are out there, ride shares and other things like that, that we're doing to transform our soldier and family experience on our installations? So we'll start with Sergeant Major Sellers, please.
So my favorite topic, as you can tell, because come my middle name here in the last couple of years of campus style dining, I've been working this for so long. I think that when I look up in the mirror, I see a chef hat on my head. So been very familiar with food over the last couple of years in working this endeavor. And I would tell you that our ecosystem and what we're doing to improve that is come a long way since the days of our battalion dining facilities, where every soldier had, quick access to, the dining facility within walking distance. In the last couple of years, we kind of spread that out and went to a brigade footprint. So it's taken a little bit more to get to the dining facility. And so that's kind of degraded the throughput and the manpower and the resources. So much has been placed on our 92 Golfs and what they do every day. Not only do they have to cook, they have to pull CQ staff duty, they have to keep up their 350-1 tasks, they have to do PT. All those things are challenging inside the facility. So in the spirit of answering the question, I would just tell you that from my perspective, campus style dining is going to change the way in which we feed our soldiers, not only in garrison, but in the modern day Army battlefield. And here's why, because we've taken the entire ecosystem and connected it. So using our partners again on the installation. Not only do we have food trucks, we started kiosks so they can get to it. So it's all about providing flexible feeding options. So when the dining facility closes down the evening about 1800, they also got a kiosk they can go to. And the food trucks travel around the installation so they can get to those hard places where soldiers can't get to when they're training, in the motor pools, at the ranges, and things of that nature. So connected the entire ecosystem is the first thing that we've done. When it comes to the campus-style dining venue, we're going to take a pilot and the opportunity to take a look at, how we can get better in that area by bringing in commercial industry to modernize 5 facilities on different installations. So I would tell you that's going to change the way in which we do things. We're going to increase the ambiance in the facility, make sure it's a little bit more inviting. The soldiers want to sit down, they want to get on the internet, and it's all about building cohesive teams. Because if you've ever been to a restaurant and just sit there and watch the atmospherics inside the facility, you can tell a place where people are having fun. And that's what we want to do, right? We want to build a facility where people are going to have fun when they go inside the facility, and we can build a cohesive team at the squad leader level. Those things happened for me as a young soldier coming up in the Army. The facilities were nice. The battalion food sergeant, he owned the facility and took special pride in, putting up the unit logos and models and things around the facility, and it was very, very inviting. And we kind of gotten away from that a little bit, right? But I think in the campus-style dining, the generations have changed. It's no longer what I grew up with, right? So we got to meet the soldiers to where they're at. We've been doing some research with industry, and we went around to a couple different places. University of Alabama. I'm not a fan of the Roll Tide because I'm from Georgia, so go Dogs. But we asked you to use them as a benchmark for how we can do this better. Putting the facility in the center of the campus and where they have it, and bringing in different vendors to make sure we give them a larger variety. And what is that going to do for our soldiers? I would tell you, I think it's going to be big for our soldiers. It's going to allow them to get out of the facility, the 92 Gulfs, and then concentrate on their wartime mission of tactical field feeding and readiness. And then that's going to make them more lethal, right? And so if we do this right, we have an opportunity to make sure that, we're number one, taking care of our soldiers, and we're meeting them at the point of need. And then we're going to modernize the way that we feed them, and then get our soldiers really fit for what they need to do in combat to defend our nation.
Thank you, sir. Major. Do you want to talk about rideshare a little bit while you got the mic?
Okay, well, I got the mic, rideshare. So rideshare is a new thing that we're trying to get done. We're doing a couple of pilots. I would tell you that the best place that I've seen an example of this is Fort Carson. As a matter of fact, a couple of months ago, we were out there visiting Fort Carson, and Sergeant Major Copeland and I kind of looked at each other with the Garrison Sergeant Major, and he was telling us about how they started their rideshare program, by where all they were trying to do is reduce the number of infractions that they had off post due to drinking under the influence. And then what they allowed to do is allow Uber and some folks to get them access to the installation, doing the background check, and then allowing them on post to drop the soldiers off. And that reduced their DUI numbers in half, right? And so they took it to the next level, and then they opened that same market up to people and allowed them to come on post, do a background check. None of that stuff is going to change. You're still going to maintain security. And then allow Uber Eats and DoorDash and so on and so forth, all those industry partners off to deliver food on the installation directly to the soldier. So I think, if we do it right again, we're going to have an opportunity to, provide some more flexible feeding options to our soldiers, not just the campus style dining and the kiosks and the food trucks, but this rideshare program by where industry can come on the post and deliver soldiers their food too as well.
Super, thanks. So, Major Haynie, did you want to talk about either of those, the dining or the rideshare? You're good?
Sergeant Major Sellers did an awesome job, and what I really like he highlighted was our 92 Gulfs coming out and going into the tactical formations and field feeding and executing their mission. So everything that he's working on and the team's working on gets those 92 Gulfs, who I love very much. I'd like to give a shout out to Sergeant Major Wyndham and to Master Sergeant Cooper, who are a couple of my cooks, and they very near and dear to my heart. But Again, we need to get them out doing jobs. It's awesome.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Cockrell, you talked about technology and partnerships. This question asks, what funding is available to installations to explore technology through partnerships?
All right. Earlier, I mentioned an office called the Office of Energy Initiatives. Hey, if you've never met Bob Hughes, it's time. So what Bob does is in that office is they speak 3 languages. So what we do in the Army is we upfront that office. And that office has the ability to speak military, they speak your utilities, and they also speak private investors. So we have we have 31 completed projects from OEI across the Army, as well as they've got 15 they're working this year, to take and partner all 3 of those together that brings outside resources to the table that saves resources. Like I said earlier, we have saved or cost offset in the past 10 years since OEI was formed, $1.5 billion. We continue to press on that. The second piece is we have, through your energy savings, performance contracts and utility contracts, the opportunity to emerge new technologies, to take those, to integrate resilience technologies into place. And we take and fund the engineering on our side to be able to do that. ESPCU ESCs, we're seeing about a 24 to 1 return on investment. For OEI, we're seeing a 9 to 1 return on investment. So there's all of these new technologies. Pay attention to the news, because you should see one hopefully announced in the next few weeks about a utility savings contract that's going to revolutionize one key area. Really, really excited about that. But again, that's where I believe we've got to do is there's opportunities that we take, and with the energy reduced, what it allows us to do is that delta that we've saved is how we fund those type of contracts as well. So it's a great product across the board. I've asked my team to let's speed it up. How do we get faster? What things are in the way? How do we adjust processes? Who do we need to talk to make these things quicker?
This question is pretty specific. Sorry, Major Sellers, did you want to say something? No. This question is pretty specific to, can you speak more about nuclear microreactors and how you see installations adopting them?
All right. So the Army is considering really all forms of new and emerging technologies, and advanced nuclear is one of those. So we're in the deliberate process now of working through with different vendors through DIU just to have what's available on the surface. Stand by, because this is a deliberate process. To an installation, what it means is, like I said earlier, you've got the microgrid that distributes the power, and then you've got the actual generation source can vary. Speaking of partnerships, though, but we're also leaning extremely forward, ask OEI, on how we take data centers and energy generations and place them on installations. The only main product that I've given my team, or kind of gate, is if the outside grid goes down, number 1 criteria for anything to be built on an installation is it has to power the post, period. Now, once we get past that, we can have a conversation. So whatever the generation type technologies that we see in the future, and some new ones, there's some amazing tech that's surfacing. We're taking and we're looking at those through all of our labs as well.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else on that topic? Yeah, I wouldn't touch that one either. All right, we've got time for one more question. If somebody wants to pop up from the audience, we got time for one more. If not, we'll go to closing comments. We've got time for each of you to make a closing comment. We'll start with Sergeant Major Haynie. And as you do, I'd ask you to consider, again, the theme of the panel, any points you want to reinforce about the transformation of our installations. What are the opportunities and challenges we have, and how are we moving forward? So, Sergeant Major Haynie, your closing comments, please.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Hey, so to really kind of get after what you were talking about, ASALT as a whole has made investments not just on installations, but also back into our R&D and S&T type facilities. In recent years, we've invested in digital simulation and an analysis center down there at Missiles in Space so they can, better accurately track missiles during tests. And then, additionally, we've helped out with DevCom accelerating artificial intelligence labs, manned and unmanned tactical vehicle laboratory, and we've also human engineering laboratory up at DevCom, up at PEO Soldier. I just went up to the one at PEO Soldier last week, and it just opened. So Sergeant First Class Monty Center up there, and it's amazing how much it's come along and how they can test various types of soldier equipment that are gonna help develop future requirements and help develop future equipment for soldiers, and we're getting it in the right hands. So I think that's where ASALT has invested back into the S&T community and our installations up there. Additionally, we talk a little bit about lethality. PEO STRI down there in Florida has really led the Army on trackless targets, and last year they started fielding trackless targets to multiple installations. So now that you have targets that roll around in a GPS gridded area, and soldiers can shoot at them, and it increases their lethality. Personally, I've used them in the past. They make training more realistic, more complicated, and it is just an awesome capability. But again, that's where we've modernized the installations to better get after it. Lastly, I would like to finish out by saying that, PEO Soldier or ASALT is at the forefront of transformation. PEO Soldier is at the forefront of transformation too. I have them on my mind because we got a bunch of things we're doing. And we play a major role in developing and modernizing the installation itself, while we're also modernizing soldier equipment and training. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. Sergeant Major Sellers, sir.
So I'm going to start off where Mr. Cockrell started his opening statements. When he said, hey, this is personal. I thought that was powerful, right? Not only that, I'm going to take it one step further. Not only is this personal, it is serious, right? This is very, very serious business in what we do. And so always look at things in terms of how do we make it a memorable event for the soldiers and the families in which we serve and the connection that we come with our communities. So this year, the Army's 250th anniversary is a way to connect all of this together, because it's not only personal, but it's serious business that we got to do, and how we harden our infrastructure and how we appreciate this institution. I think this is a year that we have to be committed to doing that. There are things that are going to happen in our space that we can control, and there's some things that we can't control. But I think we have to be very committed and reaffirm our commitment to doing what we're going to do on our Army installations in the year to 250th. Now, it's not only just June 14th, right? It's got to go beyond that. So this entire year, we should be looking at ways in which we bring the communities closer to the installations, the way in which we still provide security, and in the way in which we still take care of our families. Doing all that together is not hard. We just have to reaffirm our commitment, and this is the time to do it.
Thank you, Command Sergeant Major. Mr. Cockrell.
All right, I think, again, Jennifer Formica, thank you. Thanks for great questions, great conversation. I don't think we can ever lose the fact that we have to look at everything we do through the lens of a soldier and family and through the lens of lethality. And overlaying those two is critical, everything that we do. So several months ago, I started in my office, my team knows that any day, any of them can get a random question. And the question is, what did you do today for a soldier? It's interesting to ask that question in a policy-making secretariat office, but being able to take and show that how working with a microgrid or working with something in Europe or taking and working a particular item with water security pulls its way all the way down to what did you do today for a soldier? And that is so key. You heard a lot of challenges we have, but one of the things I want to make sure folks are tracking too, as we mentioned a little bit, senior commanders are 100% vested in this as well. We have what's called installation energy and water plans. Those are signed off by the senior commander that says these are the 200, 300, 100, whatever number of buildings it takes for me to do my mission. That's our focus. How do we ensure those facilities to make sure that resilience and that commander can do his mission is where we're driving forward and pushing a lot of energy and effort. We got a lot to do. I like the statement that was said earlier today is, I'll paraphrase, we're not where we need to be, but we're better today than we were yesterday, and we're going to be better tomorrow than we are today. Thank you for being here. For willing partners, thank you as well, because you can tell we've got to transform fast. And some of you guys are further than we are, and we're ready to go to school on your shots. So, General Formica, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hey, you never know the personality of a panel until it unfolds, but I really love this panel and the perspective these gentlemen bring, not only from their current position, but from their decades of experience. So thank you to the panel for your leadership and service in our Army. Second, for your thoughtfulness in preparing for this panel and your terrific responses to the questions. I thank you for your participation and your thoughtful questions. And as always, I thank AUSA for everything you do every day for soldiers, civilians, and families in our Army. So thank you. It's been a great panel. Look forward to the rest of the day. Thanks.